Well, greetings to you and yours, and welcome to Fut-Afrique News, where we keep the finger on the pulse of all things African news. Let's take a look at the stories making headlines. Wafcon 2026 qualifiers preparations get underway. Simba SC quarterfinal jitters. We look at the Afcon stadiums. Banyana head coach Dr Desiree Ellis names a squad that will face Lesotho in 2 friendly matches. And so we kick-start it over here. Harambee starlets are set to face Tunisia in the first round of the 2026 Women's Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers, with the first leg set to take place on the 21st of February at Ulinzi Sports Complex. Now, head coach Banda has named her provisional squad and emphasized the need for an attacking approach as the team begins their preparations. The Harambee Starlets head coach Banda kicked off her training camp on the 10th of February as the Football Kenya Federation confirmed the venue for the first leg encounter. The return leg is set to take place on the 25th of February in Tunisia, where the Starlets will look to seal their place in the next stage. Meanwhile, the Uganda women's national team officially began residential training on Monday at Hams Stadium, Nakivubu, as they gear up for their 2026 Women's Africa Cup of Nations qualifier against Ethiopia. After checking into camp at Crane's Paradise Hotel in Kisasi on Sunday, the team kicked off their preparations with a light activation session in the morning before hitting the training ground later on the day. All locally based players reported for duty, while their foreign-based contingent is expected to start arriving this week. The team is coached by former Banyana player Cheryl Bottis, and she said that she was pleased with the opening session and emphasized the value of blending the experienced players with the emerging talent. Uganda is set to host the first leg on Friday, the 21st of February, before travelling for the return fixture in Ethiopia. This will take place on the 26th of February, which will be a Wednesday. The Crested Cranes are determined to secure a return to the Women's Africa Cup of Nations, having last featured in the 2022 edition in Morocco. Onto this now. Morocco's selection of 9 venues for the 2025 TotalEnergies Africa Cup of Nations will set a new record for the most stadium used in a single edition, surpassing Mali's 6 in the year 2002. The Complex Sportif Prince Moulay Abdallah in Rabat will host the opening match, final and 5 other games. The Mohammed V Stadium in Casablanca, which hosted the 1988 final, will stage 8 matches, as the Gadi Stadium out in Marrakesh. The Cairo International Stadium holds the record for the most Africa Cup of Nations matches that have been there, 35 across 4 editions, including 4 finals, followed by the Accra Sports Stadium, 32 for them, and the Baba Yaro Stadium, which has 26. The first ever Africa Cup of Nations matches were played in Khartoum Municipal Stadium out in Sudan. With this expansion, Morocco's tournament will significantly add to the Afcon's rich history of venues. Tanzanian giants Simba SC, widely regarded as one of Africa's biggest football clubs, have long been a prominent force in continental competitions. Yet, despite their pedigree, the Wekundu wa Msimbazi have faced a familiar stumbling block in both the CAF Champions League and the Confederations Cup. They have reached the quarterfinals of the CAF Champions League on 3 occasions in the 2020-2021 season, the 2022-23 season, and the 23-24 season, and made it to the same stage in the CAF Confederations Cup during the 2021-22 season. Yet, despite these strong performances, they have consistently fallen short when the pressure of the knockout rounds intensifies. This season, under the guidance of South African coach Fatu Davis, Simba SC has been in stellar form both domestically and on the continent. They find themselves in a fierce title race with eternal rivals Young Africans, with just a single point separating the 2 teams in the Tanzanian Premier League. Now, in addition to their domestic success, their continental ambitions are also very much alive. Simba's performance in the TotalEnergies CAF Confederations Cup group stage has been nothing short of impressive. They finished top of Group A with an outstanding 13 points, losing just once in a group that included tough opponents like SC Constantine, FC Bravos de Maquis, and CS Sfaxien. This record shows the strength and determination of a team that is not only hungry for success but also capable of competing at the highest level. Now, as the quarterfinal draw for the TotalEnergies CAF Confederation Cup looms in the horizon, Simba SC will hope that this season marks the end of their quarterfinal curse. The draw is set to take place on Thursday, the 20th of February, where fate of all the top-performing teams will be determined, and Simba SC will be hoping for a favourable matchup that allows them to finally break through the elusive barrier. The club supporters will without a doubt be optimistic, as the team has shown the kind of form that suggests that they are more than capable of going deeper into the competition. Now, with a combination of youth, experience and a tactical mind such as Fazio Davis, Simba SC's ambitions has never been more clearer. The real question, though, is whether they can finally conquer the quarterfinal demons and take a step towards continental glory. Well, moving on to this now and bringing in a reliable source in Mthokozisi Dube all the way from Far Post. Let's talk about the Libyan club. Mtho, kunjani?
Ngiyaphila kakhulu Itu.
The Libyan clubs seem to be big spenders within their first transfer market. Let's talk about it. What's happening out at Al Ittihad?
Look, we've seen some shock moves in Libya. I mean, to think a Libyan club would sign a top striker from Egypt playing for a big club like Al Ahly, I think it was came as a shock for me. They went in and signed Mahmoud Karaba, who worked closely with Pitso Mosimane during his time at Al Ahly. They brought him in for 6 months on loan, but they're not done. They went to AS FAR Rabat and paid $500,000 for Dumisang Oribonye, the Botswana international. A bit of a shock move because he joined AS FAR Rabat at the start of last year in the second round of the season under Nasreddin Nabi, who's now at Kaizer Chiefs. But I'm told they're also very much interested in one of the Kaizer Chiefs players who plays for Botswana, the Botswana national team, that's Tateao Natitlokwe. So a lot of activity happening there, but they're not the only ones that have been doing a lot of transfers. We've seen as well, Al Hilal, Benghazi also going to the market and signing a couple of players. So there's been a lot of movements there in Libya.
Yeah. As someone who's really invested in the development of football on the African continent, let me know as to how this stimulates or how does it backtrack the development of Libyan players out in Libya?
Look, I mean, when you bring in top quality players, you obviously improve the quality of your domestic league. Which is important even for the domestic players because they are playing week in, week out with top footballers. I mean, a guy like Karaba, he's played a lot of games in the CAF competitions like your CAF Champions League, where they've lifted it. I think in the last four seasons, he's actually lifted it 3 times. So playing with that kind of footballer with his experience, I think does a lot for a young player, a young Libyan player. So I expect this to improve the level of the Libyan domestic league.
Yeah, talking about improving the domestic league, it doesn't necessarily translate to it improving the national team though. How then does this affect the national team of Libya?
Look, I do think it has effects because the stronger your domestic league, I think the more players you produce who are able to do well for
but
your national team.
But they're bringing in more players than producing.
Look, I mean, you look at South Africa.
Okay.
South Africa is a good example. I mean, the way they performed at the last Afcon, the Afcon 2023, which was held in Ivory Coast. Bafana were one of the best performers in that competition with a squad dominantly made of local-based players. You do know that in South Africa you have at least 5 foreigners in each team, but you still have a very competitive league. You still have quality players that still compete on an international level. So I think bringing in high-quality foreign footballers improves the level of your game and obviously challenges the players, the Libyan players, to improve their game and take it to the next level. And when they play for the national team, they obviously then, do better.
Money aspect of things. Let's talk about that.
Look, very, very interesting. I think when you look at the kind of transfers that are happening, I mean, as I gave an example, with Dumisang Oribonye, the Botswana international, I think there was a clause of $500,000 on his contract with AS FAR Rabat, and his coach, his former coach, who was with him at USM Alger, Juan Carrido, going out for him, and paying close to 500,000, US dollars. That's quite a lot of money for a player on the continent. So we've not seen, or maybe we've seen in South Africa recently, Kaizer Chiefs paying more or less the same amount for their Congolese striker Glody Lilebo.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the growth of African football, and this is exactly the things that we want to see for players to move around on the African continent as opposed to us exporting into other continents. Do you believe that this is the start of many and this is feeding into the vision of Dr. Patrice Motsepe?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that Dr. Patrice Motsepe, the CAF president, said at the Afcon was that he would love to see a scenario where African players are comfortable to stay on the continent or in their native countries and play football and be well rewarded. And I think when we see, these movements, the kind of money that are also spent on these players, I think it's encouraging just to see that a lot of, maybe a South African player could actually be saying, let me go to North Africa and play in Libya, let me go and play in Egypt. I think we've seen in recent times, players like Kanisa Mayo moving to Algeria with Siar Belouizdad. We've seen Elias Mukwana moving to Esperance in Tunisia. So it's quite interesting just to see these moves. Thembinkosi Loch now moving to Wydad to join Rulani Mukwena and Kesha Smailula. So I think it's quite interesting just to see all those movements happening. It does say the African game is growing and will reward the players very well.
You talk about African players moving, and another thing that's exciting is it's not just the players that we're exporting, it's also the coaches, and we see them moving around and staying on the continent, and that's what we want. Let's talk about Navi coming out and saying that he had an offer from the Tunisian national team. As we know that Tunisia, since probably the early 2000s, that's the last time that they were really at their peak. They're trying to get back to that.
Yeah, look, I think quite interesting. They've been looking for a coach, I think, since October, since they parted ways with their coach in October. And one of the coaches that they targeted was Nasreddine Nabi. He was very high on their list of coaches that they wanted to bring in to coach the national team. Him being Tunisian also obviously, does mean he would be patriotic and would want to coach his national team. But he made it clear to the media and said that he turned down that opportunity because he believes in the Kaizer Chiefs project. He wants to be at Kaizer Chiefs. And they've gone and appointed Sami Trabelsi. We know him. He was with the Tunisian national team between 2011 and 2013. He actually won the CHAN in 2011 with them. So they've actually appointed him, and he's going to be in charge of the national team. And hopefully, we do know they last won the Afcon. They only won the Afcon in 2004.
On home soil.
He will be looking to go to Morocco at the end of the year to try and win it. But also there's the World Cup qualifiers that are coming in March. You'll also be looking to help Tunisia qualify for the World Cup 2026.
For Nabi, I'm not saying you're a Kaizer Chiefs fan. I just want to know from you, Mtho. If I put you in gold and black right now, him staying at Kaizer Chiefs, was that the right decision? Yes or no? And why?
Look, absolutely, for a number of reasons. He's already started a project. Of course, there's been challenges. It's not started very well. But you can see now with the signings that they've made in January, you can see some positive signs. It's showing that if they do bolster their squad again in the next transfer window, he could actually have a competitive team next season. And I think for him, he would be looking and thinking, let me finish what I started, because he stands to be that coach that ends a decade-long trophy drought at Naturena.
Well, we wait and see as to how the Glamour Boys are actually going to be glamorous under the tutelage of Navi. I just want to know from you, obviously, when it comes to South African coaches and the way in which we're able to export. Fadlu Davis out in Tanzania doing a fantastic job. We also have seen Peter Msimani do a fantastic job. Coach Rulani Mukwena also taking Sean Low with him, and everyone else who has just been an export of South Africa and going out and coaching. What then does it say about the quality of coaches that South Africa actually produces?
Look, it speaks volumes about the quality of coaches that South African, the South African Football Association is producing. I think we must give credit to them. We've seen in recent months a number of coaching courses, CAF A, CAF B, CAF C, so we obviously are churning out more qualified coaches, and I think for the game to grow, you need to have as many qualified coaches. And I think for South African coaches to go out there and do the way they've done. Morena Ramurebuli has won the league title twice in Botswana. He's now in charge of the Botswana national team. He's guided them to the Afcon for the second time in history. Fadlu Davids at the top of the Tanzania Premier League. with Simba SC, and we know they've struggled to do that in the last 3 years. He's come in now and he's changed things, and they look like a competitive club that could actually win that league title. So, I mean, coming back from Raja Casablanca, where he won the league title as an assistant coach to Joseph Zinba without losing a game, I think it speaks volumes of the quality of coaches that South Africa is producing.
And just finally, before we wrap up this conversation, the last 18th area that he played in was the one at Manchester United. Kenya seems to be knocking. Would that be a perfect fit?
Look, I don't think that would be a perfect fit for him. Obviously, knowing the kind of person that he is, very outspoken, not happy. And I'm saying this because I think the last time we saw the coach of the Harambee Stars in South Africa, when they played their qualifiers in South Africa, I think they played Zimbabwe in Polokwane, the coach complained. The coach of Kenya complained about the quality of training fields that they had to use in preparation for games, and just the logistics, around the team. And knowing Coach Benny, he doesn't take prisoners. He would definitely be very clear and straightforward about things that are not done right. And I don't know if they are ready for that kind of coach. But I do think, from a coaching career perspective, I think it would be a good move for him, because Kenya has been struggling a lot on the international scene. He could be that guy that comes in and revives the Harambee Stars.
Well, so much to say, so little time. There's so much more I want to ask you, because we talk about money that's being splashed on the African continent, and then I also just want to talk about Amazulu. I'm like, if they could afford Benny, why is it that even once he was gone, they were not able to bring in another quality coach? And all due respect to the coaches that they've had, but of the same caliber.
Look, I think he's actually spoken and said his biggest undoing was overperforming in his first season and leading them to a second place finish. I mean, at some point they looked like they would challenge Sundowns for the league title. I mean, they went to the CAF Champions League, and I think they outperformed, they outdid themselves. And I think what they had to do thereafter was to build onto that, invest in the squad, bring in the right quality of players, which would actually help him do much better. But I think the club didn't do that. And the following season, I think they struggled. Eventually, he left. So they've had to go back and start, picking the pieces and trying to rebuild. So it's always going to be difficult to start a rebuild afresh.
Yeah, it's just me playing devil's advocate and saying, bring him back. Let's rebuild yet again. But I'm told that's all the time we have for this week. Thank you.
Well, it's a joy.
And just like that, that's how we wrap up this edition of Fut-Afrique News. My name is Itumeleng Banda. Until next time, make sure that you're following Post, make sure that you're following Fut-Afrique, and keep your finger on the pulse as far as football is concerned on the African continent.